over. Oh, what's up, team?
Oh, hiya.
Oh, hey.
How's it
It's going good.
Oh, hello.
Oh, man, I cannot tell you how excited I am to chat with some of these people. David, it's been a little while. We'll do intros in it first, but I just want to say that it has been too long since you and I have talked. We've had some great times going over to Edinburgh and drinking and having a good time and hanging out and getting to kind of talk a little about little business. And yeah, so how are you doing, David?
I'm doing good. Just so everyone knows, I'm the art director at 4J. I'll introduce the rest of the team. Tom, you go first.
Hello, I'm Tom. I'm a gameplay and level designer for 4J Studios. I help build the world.
Nice to meet you,
Brian?
Tom.
Hi, folks. I'm Brian Lindsay. I am the senior mob artist.
And Elle.
Hi, I'm Elle, and I'm a level builder. So I worked on the level with Tom.
Nice to meet you, El. I did forget one thing before we get started on my intro. We have some new subscriber badges made by the amazing artist Skyo from Nox Crew. I just want to kind of shout out the ones with the little hats. Jigerbob's got a little 6-month Minecoin icon with a Stitch hat. Florian's got the tier 2 with the other hat, and Arsenic has the 3-month. So just a big shout out to her and making some amazing art. I forgot to do that in my preamble. That was something super exciting that just got approved today. She's working on making me some new little sub badges. So, well, awesome. I'm super excited to have David, Tom, Brian, L, all y'all on the call today. So I kind of want to first start with just a little bit of history of 4J, just in case people don't know exactly kind of where you guys started. I've been working with your team literally since I started on at Microsoft on Minecraft about 4.5 years ago. I was working with you guys building first-party DLC, all the kind of skin packs, and helped port over some of the other ones. So maybe a little background of 4J and how you kind of got into Minecraft.
Whoa, that's going back a bit.
It's going back a bit. I know. You didn't think I was going to start just from Star Wars, did I? I had to go all the way back. This is a 45-minute interview.
Yeah, so we were working out. So Console Edition came out in 2012. And the only reason I worked it out is because I was working on a bug for the first birthday pack that we ever did. There was a small bug came up that the sheep wasn't wearing its top hat. So we were fixing that the other day, and it made us realize how long we've been doing this. So we must have started late 2011 doing Console Edition with the first DLC coming out. So like summer 2012, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how long we've been doing DLC for. We've done most of the Minecraft packs, not all of them. There's been some really great additions recently with Frozen and Jurassic World, obviously. But generally, up until a year ago, yeah, that's all we did. On DLC side was purely first-party work. We've done a few of our own packs as well since then.
Mm-hmm.
But, yes. Yeah, this one has been 6 years coming.
Yeah.
We first did a pitch for it 6 years ago, which is quite amazing.
It's actually, 6 years ago. That's so crazy. It's honestly amazing how fast time flies.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's super cool. So like, I love that you guys basically started doing the, getting into the whole Minecraft thing by actually building the Xbox 360 and Xbox One versions, and then we kind of had the migration to Bedrock, and then now you guys are kind of helping with some of that stuff, and then also building DLC. So I know like we went over there and saw some of the kind of the early stuff, but I wanted to kind of ask the question, and maybe this is a question for everybody: what is your favorite 4J DLC that you've built, or maybe that the team has built?
That's a tough one. Probably.
I usually have two.
I know it sounds daft, but I saw Star Wars in 1970 as a 10-year-old in the cinema. So this has been a massive dream for me to work on. It really has. Other than that, Nightmare Before Christmas, and I love our mythology packs, especially Greek mythology.
Yeah, my favourite's probably the Egyptian mythology pack. And because that was the first time I got to properly experiment on the mob design. Yeah, I absolutely loved them. Loved that pack.
I don't know, I remember playing. I love the
Star
mythology
Wars.
series just in general. L.
My favorite's probably going to be Star Wars because it's Star Wars. Everything can run, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say I do have to say I think Star Wars has got to be probably my favorite now too as well. Although Toy Story is a very very close second. My wife is a huge Toy Story fan, so when I brought her into that world, she was like totally like geeking out over every single detail. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love
Sweet.
the story too.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Star Wars. Let's dig into it because I was just blown away by just every single part of it. The music, the skins, the textures, the builds. I mean, everything came together to make this product that I felt was so true to form and also just like so fun and like immersive. There's so many pieces of it, so we're gonna kind of jump around here and kind of talk a little bit. But I want to talk about the art first because I think that's the kind of the first thing that you kind of notice just when you load in the game. You start to see the R2D2 loading bar. You see the Star Wars logo at the top, and then you see the panorama change, and you jump right in. And you realize like, oh, this is a full mashup. So was it a pretty early decision to do like a full mashup for this map?
Yeah, I mean, we came into it thinking, should we make this a world or a mashup? But 4J are renowned for doing mashups. We just like working that way. It wasn't initially targeted as being as expansive as it is. Most of the ideas were there from the start, but we didn't think we would get things like sound effects and the music. You know, we weren't expecting that at all. And getting all of those just meant we could go to town.
Yeah. So that's cool. So you say that 4J usually likes working on mashups. What do you mean by that?
So a mashup for us is you want to still be able to play Minecraft, not in the world that we've created. You want to still get the vibe of that world. No, in this particular pack, the mashup is slightly different because obviously in a normal world you don't sort of like put in a behavior pack and things like that. So this is expanded slightly, but you can still go and make everything you want to make yourself in a normal Minecraft world with that Star Wars theme. And we always feel that that's important because in our background, we're all creatives at heart and we want everyone to be as creative as possible.
I love that. That's so cool. I mean, you're right because this totally just sparked my memory because I was watching on Twitter. Adrian Brightmore from the World Foundry was starting to use your texture pack. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not, but he's starting to use your texture pack with some of his Star Wars builds that he's done, and like that he already has existed. And he's like, well, I just kind of ported this texture pack over, and now that it looks like I like identical to the actual real thing, which I thought was really cool. So I love that idea that it's like you go into this map like we want this to be something that you can bring to your own kind of vanilla world, and that is a pillar of the content creation. So along those lines, I really like how you actually even went even further in my minds with changing a lot of the default kind of like zombies and skeletons and things like that to those kind of Star Wars things. So Brian, was that your role, kind of building out those mobs and stuff?
Yeah. Essentially, what I would do is have a look at the mob itself, and in terms of its design, its behavior in the game, I would have a look at that and then see what would fit from the Star Wars universe, what would fit directly onto these creatures in the game. So, for example, take the horse. So you can tame the horse, you can ride on it, you can run around it, and you gain a great speed. And one idea that we thought of was, what if we can just modify this to be a speeder bike? You can get on it, you can ride it around and stuff like that. And it was just really nice to kind of give it the same behavior and essentially just you get to ride a speeder bike, but it was a horse. That was quite quirky and fun. What other ones? There's like the zombie, for example. We thought we'll make it like a stormtrooper. Easy enough. It's an enemy mob. So something very simple. Just changing something to be a different enemy to represent a different enemy, or even completely changing it entirely. So, for example, what can I say? Like the X-wing. The
Mhm.
X-wing is based off a mob, but it's actually and it was entirely rebuilt, so you can actually get in it and you could fly it. So it was one of the first things that we've managed to do, that you can get a flying vehicle in the game. That was essentially a mob as well. So, it was a lot of thought process going into it, but yeah, that's what we do. We just pretty much take a mob, look at it, and go, what can we do that will make this fit more into the universe that we're trying to replicate? Take that and then design as we see fit, and then just make changes and then finalize, and you get the end product essentially. So
That's cool. And then
Yeah, so,
Arsenic. Oh, go ahead, David. I'll let you
yeah.
finish.
So what we were doing was basically all the dark mobs, if you like, became stormtroopers and things, and all the villagers, when they became zombified, they actually become the adversaries. So the villagers on Bespin become Imperial troopers and things like that. So there's this sort of eternal fight going on with the good and bad side, the light and dark side.
Yeah, I'm just showing off the little speeder bike too that you were kind of talking about. Well, not the speeder bike, but the land speeder. There's a speeder bike over here, I think, but just had the world loaded up. So yeah, so again, if there's any areas that you guys want to kind of show off, I can definitely teleport over to those. But I want to just call out from Arsenic in the chat from Noxcrew said he really liked how the different types of zombies were the different like types of stormtroopers. So how did you kind of decide which which zombie became which? Was it, did you have kind of a big spreadsheet, or is it sort of a little bit more ephemeral than that?
Massive spreadsheet. I mean, normally when we do a mashup pack for an IP holder, we say, hey, we'd like to do this. It's a little bit rough. We say, well, we'll show them every approval sheet and things like that. But the level of detail that you have to go to for Star Wars, because of everyone's knowledge of Star Wars, or sort of like fan knowledge as well, it's so in depth that you have to try not to make any mistakes whatsoever. And that was a conscious call on us to make those differences, but we needed input from Lucas as to really who should go with who and things like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll see if I can kind of pull out some of these stormtroopers on the video, and kind of show up some of these. They should show up as just zombie because this is a mashup. So let's grab regular zombie. Let's grab the husk. Show off a couple of these cool. Oh, it was daytime, so they're gonna burn, but that's okay. Look at that sweet stormtrooper.
Throw them under the sand.
Oh yeah, I can
sand.
go over and we'll go over it here. Yeah, look at that. And then you got the Tusken Raider as the husk, the stormtrooper. So cool. So how is it working with the extra kind of geo and stuff like that too? Because that's the one thing I kind of noticed on a lot of these is you got some flexibility and freedom to kind of really add extra detail onto the mobs. So did you have like kind of reference that you were kind of using to make those? I just feel like the entities in general in this map, I think, are just so precision and finely crafted. I guess that was kind of what you were touching on, but I'd be kind of curious how the creation process with that, and then even working with Disney too, to make sure that these details are accurate.
Yeah, I mean, Brian for the mobs uses Blockbench, just like almost all the creators use. For the skins, we've got our own little tool that we use for doing the geo and the skins. That's something we developed initially, but then early days of Bedrock, the team in Redmond created their own tool, which frankly was just a little bit easier to use.
Yeah.
Nicer to get things out of. So we switched over to that, and we still actually use it. You've got to do a little bit of hacking afterwards to make sure everything works. But it's still good to use. This was an HD pack, so all the characters were sort of double resolution. So it kind of made sense to give that level of geo as well. So we're using small pixel geo extensions on things where we can. But really, we still want to keep it Minecrafty, so the core face is always generally there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just love the skins too. That they just look so realistic, but also there's. So how did you go about kind of defining the art style? Because like that is kind of one thing too. Working with Minecraft, you have, since these are double res, they're 32 by 32, so you have some extra pixels to work with. But there's definitely like an art style that you had to go and create to kind of work with these. So how did you kind of define that?
Just back and forth with the artists. They'll put forward a few sort of like looks for us, and we'll refine that. Once we're happy with the look of it, that will go off to Lucas, and they'll ask for similar, changes on top as well, just to make sure that they're happy with everything. It takes a while. It's not a quick process, but it's quite an efficient process, and generally you want everything to feel congruous and sort of all together. So yeah, it's just a bit of time.
Yeah,
spending time to get that consistent look.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the X-Wing, for example, took about a week to fully texture and build. Like, to build and fully texture took a week for the X-Wing. Whereas if you look at, say, the Endermite, which is just a little mouse droid, probably take half a day.
mm-hmm.
It's just I think it's just all comes down to experience as well. Like, I mean, I've been with the company now for quite some time, so for me, I kind of know what the style would be like, and I've got a good idea of what I could present to 4J, and it would be really good, and it'd be enough that we can kind of tweak just small bits and then send it off to Lucas. And thankfully, they were very pleased with the work we were producing as well. So, and yeah, changes happened, but that's totally fine. We're acceptable to that, and we take it in our stride, and we provide great quality work. But yeah, it does take a bit of time, but it's worth it in the end, and definitely. So
Yeah, that's cool. Well, I have a couple donations to shout out, because we got a couple donations while we were talking about art, and then we'll kind of talk about the build after that, because I was gonna say that is the second part that struck me so immediately when I started playing. But yeah, so I want to give a shout out to Alex from Blockception with $100 donation to No Kid Hungry. Thank you very much, Alex, and then also Bram from Shapescape with a $75 donation. So we are already over a 1/4 of the way there to the $1,000 goal for today, to No Kid Hungry. So thank you, Alex and Bram, and a couple of extra followers, 4J Fife and Snow Blonde. Thank you for the follow. But yeah, let's talk about the build, because I like, here I'm gonna turn the game back on, because I was just like so blown away just jumping right into this, and the fact that it starts with you right in front of the Sandcrawler. Was that a pretty early decision?
No, it came later. We were thinking of starting it at the crash pod, but the crash pod in the desert is very much C-3PO and R2-D2, so it didn't make sense that you might actually spawn as a different character and end up there. Whereas we felt there was a few more characters hanging around Luke's homestead, so it made more sense to move it there, and there's a bit more going on as well with the droids wandering about.
Mm-hmm. So then you have
because it is a vehicle, like we had that option of like, where do we want to put it? Obviously, Mos Eisley is kind of in a fixed location, as is Jabba's palace, and we're like, right, how is it all composed where like we're not just going to have the Sandcrawler like visible from every single place? So kind of sort of recreated that scene where it rolls up outside Luke's house, and that's where that's kind of our reasoning behind putting R2-D2 right there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think the coolest part about just the worlds is how you're able to tie so many different pieces from all the different kind of movies and Star Wars kind of fiction, but then fit them all together. Because I think Tatooine is a great example of that, where just like you were saying, you start at the Sandcrawler, and then you get to go to Luke's, kind of childhood house, and then you can go to Mos Eisley, and then you have the 3 different ships, so you can go to the Mandalorian worlds, you can go to some of the Empire worlds, you can go to some of the places with the Millennium Falcon, and then Jabba's palace is there. So what was the I was gonna say what was the process, I guess, but how did you kind of fit all of those together, and how did you like decide which scenes fit best together to be on one sort of biome?
Planets was the easiest part of that. We had the planets scoped out in the very first concept art we supplied Disney. That was an idea we had. We were expecting it to be more islands in the sea type scenario. We didn't really consider using the void at first because we were making just a Minecraft mashup. It's not something we'd done before. But when they said, well, can we make these full planets? We went, yeah, I suppose we can. Never done a map this big with that many objects in it. To give you an idea, the Tatooine alone is the size of 80% of our mashups. Just Tatooine. Yeah, all the mythology packs are no bigger than Tatooine. That's how big this thing is. It's huge. But
that's crazy.
I mean, really, once we'd sort of laid out the planets, it was up to Tom and Elle and the team to sort of like scope out what we needed there. And basically, Tom, I think it was you that had to work out how we would get between the places.
Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
So pretty early on, like when we obviously decided to use planets, we initially thought, right, how are you going to get to between these, because just a big void, there's going to be no way to do it. So ships, Star Wars, you got to have vehicles that fly, but we initially settled upon a sort of fast travel system we figured out, right, the Falcon visits this location and this location, this location, and then but this location, well, we've got the Razor Crest for all these planets, and then for any other planets that we couldn't, where the Falcon didn't visit, for example, Endor, we're like, well, there's a Imperial shuttle there, so let's connect that up to that, and we kind of mapped out this like fast travel network, and then we were like, all right, well, we'll do it simple. We'll do this system where it's just using teleport actors, teleport functions, and then as soon as we did that, I kind of started iterating upon it. Started by adding the star trails, and then it became adding the sound effects. Then it was adding the all the sort of blindness effects to kind of the way it works is like it spawns a box around the cockpit to make it look dark, but then it's got to like reset itself for the next time. It was a kind of crazy process where I was just kind of allowed to just continue with it because it's like, well, we need this. It's the only way you're going to get across from planets other than the little flyable ships. So it kept evolving, and I'm quite happy with how it turned out, especially when it came to selecting the destination, because we were like, well, how do you know where you're going? It's like, do we have a ship that only takes you point A to B and it's like a big linear route? But we didn't really want to have a set path to fly around the world. So we settled upon using custom maps that we, texture. We display that, and then we had a little redstone system that it was kind of like a selector, so you keep pressing right to go through various maps, and when you get to the end, it cycles back to the beginning, and that's all done via command blocks and redstone. It got a little bit crazy, but the fact that it all came together in the end, and it seems to do the trick, and people seem to pick it up really quickly, as I'm glad it worked in the end.
No, I was going to say, like, Jiggerbov in the chat said the ship UI is so intuitive, and I have to totally agree. Like, when I was jumping in there, I was, like, there was just this, like, learning process when I was playing through the map, because I only kind of was very kind of just, looking over the edge of the development of this map, because I really like to kind of play these maps fresh, right? So when I was first kind of playing it fresh on stream, I was like, okay, so I know we can get to these other locations, but I'm not sure how. And we kind of playing around, then I go into the ship and I flip the switch, and then I see the map turn on. I'm like, oh, is that Endor? And then I hit the button again. It's like, oh no, that's Cloud City of Bespin. That's the Death Star. Then it kind of clicked with me. I'm like, oh, I see what's going on here. And then I flip the switch, and then it goes into light speed, and I was just like, Holy shit! This is amazing. This is the coolest thing that I've ever seen. So it was really intuitive how you kind of did that. So like, was that? I mean, I was gonna say who had the idea, but it sounds like it was kind of yours. But I don't know. I was so impressed with how cool that was to kind of connect to all those different places. So then
I think
I
it's
want.
one of those.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's one of those things where like an idea is like it's probably just sort of shared amongst the team. Like someone will mention it, someone else will like pick upon it, and then someone else will just work on it and go crazy with it. And I think that's exactly how that came along.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like that's kind of our intention is like because it's a mashup pack and we don't have a sort of set quest or adventure to follow. We kind of rely on those like we want those like wow moments and just like making it so we don't have to like tell people what to do. They just find it, work it out, and then once they know how it works, they can continue. Like just they can then now they've got all the tools to explore the world, and yeah, that's kind of what we go for.
Yeah. Well, I like what you say about all the tools to explore the world, because I think that was the other thing that was really cool about it was that there was so many like little chests and boxes that all had like the items that you would contextually see in this area. They were all like helpful survival items. So it's like you found like a diamond sword, which is a lightsaber. But then when you went to like, the Mandalorian, I can't remember the name of that planet, unfortunately. But when you go to that area, you kind of saw more kind of like wooden and kind of more like low tech kind of weapons. So who kind of placed all of those? Was that the part of the build team that kind of sprinkled the different items through the chests and stuff?
Next one for you, El, I think.
Yeah, I think it's the sort of thing where each person working in their specific area and what they're doing at the time, they'll do their best to sort of propagate each chest with the things that would make sense because they're in that mindset of like, I'm working on Tatooine, and they're thinking about everything about Tatooine, so that what's in the chest, it's in the same sort of thought process as what blocks you're using. And then afterwards, we do sort of runs through checking each chest, making sure everything's filled. So it'll be those sort of final polish bits where you're thinking, right, where's the diamond sword or Luke's lightsaber? Where's that going to specifically be? And you're constantly thinking about those sort of things. But it's just, I would say it's just as important as what blocks your place and how you're building something is what's in the chests, because it's a massive part of the sort of gameplay. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I love how much like thought and effort is put into those, because you're totally right. Like that is how, because this isn't like a quest based map or anything like that. It's a mashup. It's meant to be sort of explored and built on top of, and role played and just go through all those different areas. So the fact that there's so much detail put into just each of those chests really makes it feel like there was a love. I was gonna say a human touch, but like a real person kind of went through it and really kind of hand placed all of these things, and you can really tell just because of how contextually smart each of the different chests and things were. So what you meant
was to.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
It's like our aim was to sort of beat the story team at Disney to it. So the story team would come back with like all these suggestions and stuff, and then we would be trying to like sort of stay one step ahead. Right, like in this scene, what do we need? Obi-Wan's house, you want the lightsaber in the basement, or if you're in like Mos Eisley, what kind of chests are we seeing in here, or can we put a nod to this scene in here with these items, or and just like, and then hopefully we'd sort of like convey storytelling through just chests and items alone, in addition to our usual sort of storytelling methods.
That's cool. So then tell me, so I was going to talk a little bit about like how you split up the planets, but you said something here I want to talk a little bit about. So you worked with the Disney, like the Lucas story team. So what kind of different parts of working with Disney did you have access to? Because I feel like having that story team is cool.
Yeah, so we had story team. Guy we worked with was Orion. He was our producer on the story team. He would make sure every single aspect we had was checked and was completely right for the region it was in. On top of that, we had Hez and his team, Hez is the art director for Star Wars games, and he was incredible. I mean, the font of knowledge that you were able to tap into for these things was just phenomenal. Things that we could see in concept and we knew about, but we couldn't you're designing a pack around 3 films in a series, so you're trying not to go beyond that. But they were like, no, you can have these aspects in. You can look at the concept art of Ralph McQuarrie and things like that, and so that's where the spiders came from initially. Turns out they obviously knew more than we did because it turned up in another series, which was, it was great having their insight and their input, because they would spot all the details that you had an idea of but wouldn't necessarily link together all the time. It was really, really good having them on board.
So you basically got to work with somebody whose job it was just to know Star Wars universe. What a job.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's kind of the job my 15-year-old son is very suited for.
No, that sounds like a dream job.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So then it sounds like there was kind of maybe this is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like there was kind of a small sub team that kind of worked on each of the planets, and they kind of were able to build those and focus on the planets. Was that kind of how it was kind of structured on the build team?
Pretty much, yeah. Like, so we're a reasonable sized team. We have shout outs to Ryan and the 2 Scots, James, Elle, of course, and who, please tell me I'm not missing anyone.
Yeah, Constantine did build in too.
Yeah.
Yep. On the concept, and also helped out some build. So yeah, generally the way it would go is we'd either work individually or in pairs on a sort of particular location, but we'd also be jumping between, like, helping each other out as well. Usually the it becomes our first pick of like who's most knowledgeable about this planet, or who's got the most passion for this particular location, and then we sort of work in our sort of mini teams to just sort of like initially block out that location based on the concept map. There would also be iterations upon the actual layout and in terms of gameplay and sort of feasibility to make sure things have their own little bits of space. And we also have to kind of balance scale as well, because we can't build everything 1-to-1 accuracy, because we would never have enough time in the world for that. So it was all about sort of this creating these sort of dioramas. But yeah, we obviously generally I think everyone jumped between at least every planet at some point, even if it was just doing small tasks, or maybe someone one week was just dedicated to the sort of gameplay aspects and going around each bit, or maybe someone was on mob placements. But yeah, generally we sort of jump back and forth depending on changing roles depending on what's needed at the time.
I think depending on the area, you had some places where there's all 6 of us went through at one point and did a pass, sort of like on little details and things like that. There were some areas which it was all just sort of one person, and like folk would come in from time to time and work on it, but it was just one person working on it. So Dagobah, for instance, I think Scott J pretty much did that entirely. Some of us would like come in and sort of tweak things, but it was like his planet. And then Death Star 2, I think that was Constantine had created the sort of general shape of it to begin with. But the interior and all the sort of details of the end construction bit, I was just sort of put on that and just worked away on it for about 2-3 months. And then at the end there was like little details tweaked after that.
Cool.
Yeah, to give you an idea of our process of the ships and the Death Star's planets were effectively just landscaping, but the ships and Death Stars, we would build a very rough version of those in Maya, which is a 3D package, and we'd then voxel convert those in and import them in, and then we would hollow them out and fill them with corridors and stuff like that, and texture them obviously as well.
Cool. Yeah, that was gonna be my next question. Is like, so you kind of had the planets ideas kind of laid out, and they sort of, I feel like the planets you choose roughly align to some of the different biomes. So 2 questions, you can answer in whatever order. How was the kind of process of like attaching biomes to planets? And then how was actually working with the texture team as a builder to make sure that you had the textures that you would need to, accurately, model Dagobah or something like that?
So basically on the biome side, when we started, we knew what planets we wanted to include. I think there was only one addition that we ended up adding. And we'd had this idea for the villagers being specific to a biome. Then we could dress them to suit that. So on Bespin, they're wearing the orange outfit of Wilro Hood. So we knew what villages we wanted where, and that kind of forced us to think about biomes really early on. Obviously, Hoth, you want icy biomes, and Endor, you want redwoods and jungles and Yavin and things like that. But that was primarily to place the villages so we could separate the villages into little groups. After that, textures are sort of progressed on quite heavily independently at the start while the guys are starting to build. The guys will start building in vanilla, so there'll be a lot of crossover there. But your important blocks like steps and logs and things like that, we tend to reserve those for key textures that we know will be needed in a lot of locations. So they get separated out and worked on. And then we get to a point where we're probably about 60% complete on the texturing side. And then we ask the builders what they need. So they feed back in and we adjust textures. And right up to the last few weeks, we were making quite wholesale changes to blocks. When we realized some blocks were more important than others, we would switch them out and sort of change that.
So it's an interesting process sort of working with the textures because there's so many textures within Minecraft. You're always sort of making discoveries because we can't sort of get a briefing on what every texture is within Star Wars. So you'll find that, oh right, so that texture there, that's the side of the doors in Aunt Beru's homestead, but it works in so many other places. And then you end up you realise you're in sort of the same mindset as the folk that would put together the models for the Star Wars ships, where you're just taking like models from like World War II planes and taking all the little bits and putting them together to make a spaceship. In the same sort of way, you're realising, this block that was made for the side of the Death Star can also work on the side of an AT-AT, and you're constantly sort of taking bits and putting them together to make, Star Wars things, and it sort of you feel that sort of connection to the build processes that created the things in the first place.
Yeah, it's like you're given like kind of a palette almost, but then you have maybe like 40-50% of the palette that you get to kind of add to. So it's like, here's all the ones that you have access to. We're gonna kind of build it, and then there's like, I need this specific block for Bespin, or I need this specific block to do the Death Star like panel or something. Then you can kind of go back to the art team. So that sounds like a really cool, like very iterative and like back and forth process.
Oh yeah, so back and forth. It's kind of like a crazy balance to get, the materials to all look good in as a texture pack in anyone's world, but then enough Star Wars blocks that we need in the level to there's certain textures that you just cannot not have in a Star Wars world, and then we've also got like so many different planets where all these textures got to work. You've got to have chests that look good in technical locations, but also like like you said, the Endor and the Sorgan locations where it's like, so we use the barrels there. So there's a lot of iterations and back and forth and talking to the texture team all the time to make sure
you end up having interesting conversations like, oh, what's more important, Jabba's plinth or Han Solo's console, and the Millennium Falcon? What's going to be more important?
Every texture is like scrutinized over in the final days of like, oh, we need a texture for this, but we can't change anything because it's used everywhere, or there's knock-on effects, or it's like everything is too good to have.
Yeah. So a great question from Jig in the chat that kind of touches on exactly this. Are you guys excited about the new add block features coming to Bedrock that'll allow you to just add anything you want instead of having to replace the vanilla textures?
Yeah, yes and no.
Yes and no.
Yeah, very much yes and no. Because if you think about it, I mean, I do the sums, so I do the production on the team as well as art direct. So there's 1,996 textures you've already got to do in just a mashup pack. So adding more blocks isn't necessarily something you want to do. But I do like the idea of being able to adapt blocks to doing different shapes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, on a limited world, it'd be really good to be able to leave alone blocks and replicate blocks you want to use more of, like the logs and slabs and things like that.
Yeah, Arsenic says it kind of opens up a can of worms for unlimited block textures, which, Elle and Brian are gonna go. Sorry, Elle and Thomas are gonna go and be like, "All right, we need 1,000 textures. Let's go." And you're like,
Yeah,
Having
that's not.
having the limit means that we're forced to say, right, we're going to have this one texture, and we're going to be able to use that for the inside of the Millennium Falcon, Death Star, all these different places. But as soon as you're like, oh, we just have unlimited, it's like, right, okay, we need one texture artist to make all the Millennium Falcon textures, and then we'll do this, and this, and it will just so out of time.
yeah,
Certain things would absolutely be made easier, like just not having to share a single texture between so many things. But we're also so aware of how like a runaway effect it could be. So it'll be something we'll have to like carefully balance.
yeah. Well, yeah, because I was gonna say, like, the approach that David was kind of talking about earlier in the interview about like how you're going in with this being a mashup, and you're going in like with that pillar of like this is going to be used as a vanilla world texture pack. Like that does kind of make it a little more difficult to do the add block stuff, but I could see it also kind of coming in use for the shapes and the more 3D geo and stuff like that, because you could have made some really cool like spaceship interiors that are blocks, while kind of still keeping the texture pack the same. So
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we had to do for this pack is we ran out of mobs to do the droids. So a lot of the droids are actually additional. Although more that some of the mobs in the mashup were the wrong behavior patterns that we wanted to use. So we created a few extra entities so we could keep the level alive.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the last thing I want to touch on before we wrap up, because we're at that 45-minute mark, which is time has flown. This has been really cool. So thank you again for joining and talking about all this.
No worries.
Is the music and the sound effects. To me, right, this is the part that really, like, it was like the bow on top. I already had a beautiful package. You're already excited to dig into it, but then there's just this beautiful bow of the real music and the real sound effects. So tell me just a little bit about working with Lucas and Disney and getting access to that sound, and was it pretty exciting on the studio side to have access to that?
So it's quite strange. Up until a year ago, we didn't have a sound person. We didn't really need one. We just add the odd sound effect here and there, not do an awful lot of sound effects. The music would come in, we'd convert it, put it in the game. That's pretty straightforward. So we didn't really need an audio person. But last year, when we started doing our own third-party packs, we hired this little intern audio guy straight out of university. And this is Mike. And when we started this, I said, Mike, okay, so it's a mashup. We usually do maybe 5 or 6 sound effects and then, the music. And he goes, so you'll probably be on it for maybe 4 or 5 days tops. He went, yeah, that's great, that's fine. And then we met Chris. Chris works for Lucas. And he said, so you're adding these sound effects? He goes, do you not want them all? And we went, sorry? I can give you everything. And Mike was, blown out of the water. He was just
his eyes are wide. He's like, all of them?
All of them. And but the best part was all of them wasn't everything we needed in the end. We put in every single sound effect we could, but there was a few really obscure little mobs and animals, droids, that didn't have an official sound effect for. So he got to create sound effects for these little creatures and things like that would never have a sound in the movies or the TV series. So he was just
so
blown
cool.
away by that. Absolutely blown away.
What an internship. Tober 88 in the chat was like, that's one cool internship. I couldn't agree more.
Summer, but he's been full time with us for about a year.
I figured he had to be after getting the chance to do that. You got to keep somebody like that around.
Oh yeah, it was an incredible experience. And yes, his department did go a little bit over budget in time.
That's
But
fine.
It was it was worth it.
I definitely think it was
Absolutely
worth it.
though, 'cause he was able to make so many little redstone elements come to life as well. We have
Yeah.
there's a Death Star trench run in the world.
Yes,
like a
I found
minecart
that.
run.
It was so
And,
cool.
Like we had it and it was silence initially. It's like, no, we're gonna need to add the TIE fighter sounds, we want the turret sounds, we're gonna have the final sound effect, shooting the thing. And it was like, all right, here's the sound definitions for that. I'll go add them in the functions. And like, yeah, no, like just we had a sort of, me and Mike had a talk and we just added came up with a whole list of like things we've got, sounds that we could have, and I think we ended up getting most of them, which was amazing.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the best parts about working on it was I've been working on the Razor Crest. I've put it all together. I've got it accurate. And it's in game. There's not been any sound yet. And then Mike's been sort of working his magic and just adding all these sounds, and he's got into the Razor Crest. I go in, test its functionality, just go in. And then the sound goes, and you've got the Mandalorian music playing, and the sound of the hyperspace that matches the Razor Crest sound, and it goes off, and it's like one of the best experiences, like working on the pack. It's just like hearing all that sound come together.
Yeah.
One bit.
You mentioned kind of it brings alive all those redstone contraptions. So there's kind of a meme on my stream. I have a personal hatred for buttons in like Minecraft maps that are decorative. Like buttons have a functionality, and I feel like that was the coolest thing about this map is that I felt like almost all the buttons and switches that I saw had some sort of like sound effect or triggered something. So from a meme perspective,
I share this feeling that every button should do something.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we ended up. There was still the occasional button that we just couldn't get around not having for whatever reason, like the pupils of the Exogarth worm. But yeah, generally like we wanted it so that once the player knew that like a button or a lever did something, they would just be like they want to push and to like just pull everything. I want to like see what everything does. And yeah, I think just we wanted to make it like so that we added just so many little miscellaneous little redstone just to make the world feel a little bit more alive.
Yeah,
totally agree. All right, cool. Well, let's wrap it up. And this is the one of my final questions that I always ask, and we'll kind of end on what was your favorite thing. What is your favorite flavor of crisps? Very important question.
Salt and vinegar every time.
All right, we got salt and vinegar. Tom?
I'm quite a plain like ready salted, but like prawn cocktail.
Ooh, okay.
I default to salt and vinegar, just salted, but Pringles for a while did hoisin duck, and it was the best Pringles flavour they've ever done.
That sounds good. Brian?
Brian only eats protein.
No. When I have my cheat meals, Sensations cheese and bacon.
Ooh, that sounds good.
They are amazing. Honestly, get some dip, you're sorted.
That sounds great. Oh, it's always the one question we always have to ask. I really should start keeping a tally of what the favorites are.
Yeah, what the stats are.
I know. I should start doing that. Maybe I'll go back through my VODs and try and track it because that'd be pretty funny. So then, final question I have for all y'all is: what was your favorite scene or your favorite build or scene that you're trying to replicate in the map?
That is a big question.
I know it's a tough one. It's a tough one. I'll give you some time to think about it.
Yeah, that is tough.
I think
honestly,
for me,
I'll go ahead, El.
All
right.
Go ahead, El.
Tell me you go.
Right. I think my favorite scene, at least, or like series of builds, they're all kind of connected to each other. But me and Scott Adamson, we worked on Bespin Cloud City, and while he focused on a lot of the sort of the upper parts of the city, I looked at doing the sort of the route to the weather vane and the fight with Darth Vader and Luke. I really loved that balcony scene, and I was really wanting to work on that. So, but I realized there were so many more rooms before it. You got the the freezing chamber, and then there's like another mid room. And I was going through that, going through the movie like frame by frame, trying to get like every sort of shot and angle. But I think it's all worth it in the end when you sort of jump down the pit and find yourself in the little exhaust vent. I think that's at least personally my favorite scene to have worked on. What about you, El?
I think I really enjoyed working on the reactor for Death Star 2, like just building that whole thing. But it's got to be the Razor Crest just as a ship, because I was at the start of the year I was watching Mandalorian. I thought, oh, this is brilliant, and then by the end of the year I find myself building the Minecraft Mandalorian ship that's sort of been approved by Lucas, and it's mind blowing. And just working on anything from the Mandalorian was
I was gonna say, we spent an hour talking about it, and we didn't even touch on this map has the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda. Holy, like, unbelievable.
I was about to say, like, obviously I didn't get a chance to build anything in the map, but like for me, one of the most exciting bits was just to get Baby Yoda, like the reveal of Baby Yoda, and getting to animate the little cot, like the little thing he sits in and closing and opening and stuff like that. That was what I was most excited about.
I was gonna say, just on that one specifically, Chris, when he found Baby Yoda, when we were doing that scene, and he like gave it he was like, oh, do I have the milk or whatever? He's like, oh, I do, and he gave it to him, and then it like opened up and like started following him. Best top 2 moment of the stream for sure was that.
Yeah,
it's funny because Baby Yoda was one of the mobs where it wasn't part of the original vanilla pack. This one was fully created from the ground up. All animated as well, like custom animations, custom behaviors. I mean, it was brilliant to work on that one. Loved that one. One of my favorites, as well as the X-Wing. That's probably my pride and joy as well.
My favorite moment of working on the pack was sitting down right at the very start, pre-production, and I didn't know anything about the Mandalorian. It wasn't out over here at that point, but the first 3 films. Massive love of mine, and I sat down and wrote down every location that I felt we needed to include right the way through, and every single one of those locations made it into the final map, which was just fantastic.
That's so cool. That's super cool. Well, thank you guys so much. This was a fantastic time. I always love catching up with what 4J is doing. It's been too long, so we'll have to. I'm going to hop on a plane at some point and fly back over and hang out with you guys once we can do that, because I don't know, you guys just do good stuff and are some of my good friends. So I appreciate you hopping on. Is there anything, any plugs you want to give? Anything cool 4J is working on? Any projects?
Not allowed to say anything.
Okay.
But I would honestly, I would love to thank the whole team, Lucas and Disney, Winslow at Disney especially. She's our producer that interfaces with Lucas, and Ricardo as well, obviously. And my team on this were just amazing. Kate, who led most of the texture builds and everything like that and controlled that side. We just had a great time. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, David, Thomas, Brian L, and Ricardo's been lurking in here too as well. I see him in this Discord call. Thank you all for hopping on.
I'm here.
Hey, there you go. there's Ricardo, senior producer on the map. I'm gonna make you answer that one question now that you unmuted yourself. So you got yourself in this. What was your favorite build or scene in the map? Putting you on the spot now.
Probably riding the Blurg. This kind of fish bipedal thing, and they say, okay, are those actually rideable? Yeah, because they look odd, but actually they are, and that's super cool. It's like, that's like in the Mando. So
yeah, I remember jumping on that thing and being like, oh, I can't control it. And Chris runs over. He's like, hey, here's the fish on the stick. And then I started walking on it and it just had this little waddle. And I'm like, this is great. So awesome. Well, thank you so much.
In the chest.
Yeah. Thank you so much for hopping on. I'm going to sign off the stream, and then, so you all have a fantastic Friday. It is Friday night for you guys, so it is start of your weekend. So that sounds really great.
Thank you for doing this in your day off. So that's great.
No problem. This
Okay,
is
shout
I very much just enjoy doing this. It's just I love kind of bringing this content to the rest of my viewers and just giving more people an inside look on how like Marketplace is created, because it's hard. It's not just a Minecraft build. There's a lot of work and effort, sweats and love and thought and care and all these other adjectives that go into these maps. So that's my big goal, is just to share that. So you all have a fantastic weekend. I'm sure we'll be talking soon, and we'll probably be playing some more 4J maps in the future. So keep you up to date when something drops.
Cheers, will do.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.